Okay, abusu be makwa abashonko so edeba Ghana politics avenue so abusu yembonra yensem Commonwealth Lawyers Association ede letter bi ababonten suspended Chief Justice Torkornoo or the case no ekokopie mu wa ene omo release sa letter we ya letter no they are saying na ensem letter no mu bebrebe ni nyina ne say suspended Chief Justice omo Commonwealth Lawyers Association no omo call it on President Mahama say uncha suspended Chief Justice Torkornoo. The suspension muna onsan sombe act as Chief Justice of Ghana. Na ebusuya ye kind one paragraph pe letters ne de ensema letters ne mu no edoso omo che say investigations na ekoso no say fair omo ye fair to suspended Chief Justice Torkornoo. Mo me read paragraph with pressing concern, we therefore call upon the President of Ghana and the Executive Government of Ghana to immediately and without delay reinstate the Chief Justice of Ghana to her office. Consistent with both the hitherto strong attachment to the rule of law demonstrated by Ghana and also the constitutional duties incumbent upon them. Abusuya wene ensemnemu bia Commonwealth Lawyers Association omo che say suspended Chief Justice Torkornoo ne de no President Mahama calling it back na onsan so be acte ne role as Chief Justice of Ghana. Na abusuya ensem we ya Commonwealth for e de ababetu da no o wonsem kai bia fa share comment section o na yendi ehun komo yentwetwe ho ehun komo suspended Chief Justice Ghana for krampo editum say on sansom be acte anase ombe she ni role as Chief Justice no biwa anase den abusuya we ni lawyer we ni letter ababonten asisi an yenso na breaking news a ye de ebre yabedwafo ne no ene ya project e de ato ye screen no enchen e de amamnti lawyer letter ne mu nsem ni nyina say suspended Chief Justice Torkornoo omo free President Mahama na omo hye say omo on call suspended Chief Justice back na ombamba ye n'adwuma on subscribe like na share ma afofron so ensa into me enkabi medamase.
Describe those events as very strange happenings at the time. In fact, this is a case study for a lot of law students in this country. Who are told something contrary to everything that you've said right now.
Well, I think the record of proceedings is available for anybody who cares to look at them. And I think the record is what was before the Court of Appeal, which led the Court of Appeal to give a decision reversing that decision on the 18th and acquitting and discharging me on all counts. And I can only thank God that that happened. It's true, it took a while to happen. It was November
4 counts.
November 30th, I'm sorry, 2016 was when that, acquittal happened. And I spent the period from 2001 to 2016 basically trying to, defend myself. And I'm glad, I thank God that eventually that actually happened. But going back to June 18th itself, what for me is an important lesson that I personally took away from that experience was I was in court that day, in the end having to represent myself. And I was, reminding the judge of decisions that she herself had made. She herself had said she was awaiting the decision of the Court of Appeal and the decision of the Supreme Court ultimately. She herself had been adjourning because she had specifically said that if she didn't do that, there would be a mistrial, okay? She had said all those things.
I see.
Now, and
Justice
so,
Eritama itself had said
yes, on previous sittings,
that if the Court
if she did not wait for the
Supreme
decisions
Court?
of the Court of Appeal first and the
And
Supreme Court, she would be, there would be a mistrial. Exactly. She had used those words. Now, in spite of all that, she still went ahead to pronounce a judgment on that day. Now,
Is there anywhere in law that that's permitted?
You can't really make head or tail of that in purely legal terms. But the lesson that I'm trying to draw is this. We all want to have confidence in the judicial system. We want to have confidence that when we go to court, the decisions will be based on the law and the facts and so on and so forth. But we also have to recognize that, unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. There are other factors that influence the cause of justice, sadly, including the factors of political pressure being brought to bear on judges to come to a certain decision, at all costs. And in my case, there was no question about the fact that, the political pressure from right up to the president's level, the Attorney General at that time, now the President, Nana Akuffo, President Akuffo, they were determined that I would have to go to jail. And that determination seemed to be based on the wish to demonstrate that certain things had not been done right under President Rawlings in the past. 2001.
We see this happening, that the previous administration always, when there's a government or a party in opposition, they promise that when they come into power, they're going to prosecute people in the previous administration for one wrong or the other. So it becomes a political promise to prosecute. So they necessarily have to find, and it's actually sometimes that's ongoing, on both sides of the issue.
You're absolutely right, unfortunately. But let me tell you something. You're right to say that it's happened on both sides, but I can tell you from my experience of President Mills, he was a president who refused to be drawn into that kind of tit-for-tat arrangement. And he was never going to allow, and I heard this commitment directly from him, and I knew how concerned he was, that the rule of law should be, yes, political vendetta should stop. Now, I can't say that for others, but what happened in relation to me had all the imprints of that kind of political vendetta. And by God's grace, I was, vindicated in the long run. But it certainly is not a good experience that we need to keep repeating in our country. I think there's got to be a way in which, people try to address issues with a certain objectivity. That's not easy either, because when people come to power, they want to show that they are doing the right thing, whereas other people didn't do the right thing, and so on and so forth. But I look forward to the day in this country where we can actually have leaders like President Mills not preoccupied with trying to prosecute and, jail people from the other side, but people who say, look, we're all in this country together. Let us see how to enhance what has gone on before. Let us see how what happened under President Rawlings should be continued. What happened under President Akuffo should be continued. What happened under President Mahama, and so on. But that is not really what our record shows we have been doing, except for that example that I gave of President Mills.
But if politics can actually have a direct bearing and extensive influence on the judiciary, and that's dangerous. It
is dangerous, unfortunately. It's dangerous because what it means is that people begin to lose confidence in the judiciary. People begin to lose confidence in the outcomes of judicial process, because they begin to feel that we're going to court trying to state our case and trying to get justice to be administered, but we might end up, in fact, just having a certain political power position imposed on us. And that's a very dangerous situation to have as a country, because it means that all the time there will be people very aggrieved because they think that if they are going to take a matter to court,
they may not get a just.
They are not going to get a just decision. That's a very dangerous situation to be in. And I hope and pray that we can, rise above that kind of situation. But unfortunately, some of the omens do not look so great.
Do you question the independence of the judiciary now?
Well, I think the evidence is there that there has been interference politically with judicial decision making, and as I say, in my case, it was very clear. And also, one important thing about June 18th that I forgot to mention, that day, as I realized later, prison officers were already on standby around the courts to take meetings home. They were already, on standby.
There was a full arrangement in place.
There was a full arrangement in place. The police had come there in full force. Again, I didn't notice it when I went so early, but that day the police were already, prepared. Because when the news began to come out that, this is what was going on in the court, a crowd started gathering. And the police were already prepared there. As I said, the Attorney General was there with his full team and so on. So, there was clearly a premeditated, plan that was just put in place on that day using the judge. So I don't think that, from such examples, anybody can doubt the level of political interference. And let's face it. We have to deal with the human reality that judges are appointed by presidents.
See, and I was coming to the point that will the judiciary ever be independent, especially because of the appointment of the Chief Justice by the president?
It's not only the Chief Justice, frankly. Judges get appointed. Of course, they go through a process and so on. From the Judicial, Council, nominations are made and all that. But they are put forward by the President to Parliament. The Chief Justice is appointed by the President. And again, that's not unique to Ghana. That happens around the world. But you see, there are many appointments that are made by the President under the Constitution. And again, that's as it should be, because the President is the leader of the country.
There are some who think that there are too many of them.
Yes, but I'm saying that it is for the president to show that he's not appointing the judges because they are his party favorites or because he wants them to do his bidding. It is for any president to show that the independence of the judiciary really means something, and therefore not to interfere, as President Akuffo clearly did in my case. It is always for the president to rise above that. And as you've seen in other places, when President Trump thought that the Supreme Court would come to his rescue and somehow pronounce certain things in his favor, during the election situation in the U.S., he didn't get his way because the judges were trying to go by the law and trying to show themselves independent of any precedent. So I think we need to get to that place where, one, the leader himself is not expecting people to do his bidding, but two, the judges themselves, out of a respect for their own role and the importance of that role within the constitutional system, the importance of the independence that they are supposed to have, where they themselves have a commitment to ensuring that what they do is guided by legal principles, legal authority, and they show fidelity to the law and to justice. That's what their oath of office enjoins.
Fidelity to the law. And I like how you put it in both ways. So it goes both ways. The appointer must have some principles guiding the whole process, and the appointee, who is in this case the Chief Justice and the judges, must also exhibit some principles in the discharge of their duties. But let's localize this. I mean, and you talk about we facing the realities of what we are confronted with as a people. Would you recommend that process of appointment changes because of the politics of patronage that we have in this country, or we should impress on the appointer and the appointee to actually go by, for instance, what you are suggesting, in order to deal with the perception of the lack of independence of the judiciary?
I don't have any other approach necessarily to recommend as far as appointments to such high offices are concerned. But I think that what I've said regarding the sense of responsibility that judges themselves should have, they are professionals. They're people who are supposed to be appointed because of their high integrity. They're people who swear an oath, to administer the law, in accordance with the right legal principles and with justice. So I think that that's where a lot of the burden lies. But we as citizens also have a certain responsibility because, when people complain, as we've seen in recent years, people complain about corrupt judges.
Yes.
You had Anas investigations and so on. But it's individuals whose cases were before the judges who sought to influence the judges. Just as I'm saying, you can have a president seeking to influence a judge. You have individuals in the cause of their case seeking to influence the judge. Now, that means that there is responsibility on us as people. And that responsibility is not only when we have a case before the court, but in a sense, it is just as citizens who are wanting to make sure that all their institutions work properly. So, for instance, I think that, the Bar Association has often been very, prominent in advocating certain important legal positions that should be respected by people in government and so on. I think the Bar Association has an important responsibility to ensure that the administration of justice is conducted with a total respect for the independence of the judiciary. So when you have a situation where, as in my case, sadly, I have to give examples from my case. Absolutely. Because I know directly some of the things that happen, where you have a situation where the president of the Bar Association gives an interview after he and his executive have come to visit me in the prison, and he gives an interview in which he recounts some of the things that I had talked about and makes the point that if that is indeed the case, then there is cause for concern. He does that. This was Neil Samuels, and a lot of pressure is put on him, and he ends up being removed as president of the Bar Association because there are other political forces that do not want any contestation about what has been done to me, and they don't even want the facts to become better known. So when a president of the Bar Association comes out publicly and speaks about things that are part of the record, they can't be really disputed, and the Court of Appeal in the end acknowledged that, he gets removed by the Bar Association. So that tells you that the responsibilities are not only of the judges themselves. Because if at that time the Bar Association president's position had been taken up, you know, the rest of the council of the bar, the other leaders saying, right, look, this is a matter that we want to go into carefully and make sure that the independence of the judiciary is respected. I think that it would at least it would have made the president, you know, sit up somewhat, you know, not in my case, he'd already done the worst, but it would prevent him maybe next time from adopting the same approach, and it would make future presidents aware that if you take these positions which are then implemented by judges on your behalf, some people like the Bar Association would rise up against it. Other civil society organizations, you know, should also take an interest, such that, you see, justice, as the Constitution says, is administered in the name of the people. Justice is administered in the name of the people. The judiciary does not just claim its authority from their individual, you know, sort of selves, or from the fact that the president has appointed. Justice is administered in the name of the people. So the people have every right and every responsibility to raise concerns when that justice is not really being administered properly. And that is why when there are exposures like the Anas exposures and so on, it becomes a matter of great public interest. And public interest not only in Ghana, because we are trying to attract, let's say, investors. That's right. On the basis that the rule of law is implemented in Ghana. So if an investor begins to realize that these courts are acting really at the behest of the executive, they are not really acting on principle, as you said earlier, that is dangerous for the country in so many ways. Dangerous because then those investors will have no confidence in the system, and therefore they will not be willing to invest. I mean, we saw some of this when in GNPC we were trying to promote the petroleum potential of Ghana to investors outside. We had to let them appreciate that our court system, our judicial mechanisms work independently and satisfactorily to deal with disputes in a manner that is just, such that they will feel comfortable about bringing in their investment. So these are really serious and fundamental issues that can affect a lot of things for our country. And that's why I'm saying that, you know, the lesson from my experience that I keep drawing out, that it is not good for that kind of political interference to take place, not only because, you know, Chachu Chikasa wants to be a free person and there's been a free Chachu campaign or whatever, but also because the signals that are sent out about the lack of independence of the judiciary have extensive ramifications which do not benefit the country. I was amazed, and I'm still amazed, at the extent to which people outside were following the course of my trial. People in the oil industry were following and really paying attention and recognizing that things were just being done by way of a political. I was really amazed, because in the end, if you like, that is what protected me, you know, afterwards. You know, if people in the industry had felt that here was this financially irresponsible chief executive and he's been jailed, good riddance to him and so on, I would not subsequently have been able to look anybody in the eye in the industry. But mercifully, people out there knew what was going on. And subsequently, I was completely embraced, by people in the industry who actually felt sorry for what I'd had to go through and who maintained their confidence in dealing with me to enable me to do my own private, business in the industry to this day. So, I can't thank God enough for His mercies.
And you call this when you were marking the decade or 10 years on overflow of praise.
That's what
it.
my overflow of praise is about. That's exactly it. Because in all that I went through, I've come out feeling that there is nothing that summarizes what I went through more than just giving praise to God. In fact, the song that always used to ring in my mind and in my heart during those 5 months in prison was a song of Danny Nete. Danny Nete composed a song, I will worship you, I will lift up your name forever. You are Lord. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And I didn't realize that it was Danny Nete's composition when we used to sing it in church. And I went to prison, and this was a song that kept ringing in my ears and in my heart, in my mind. And then, sometime after I came out, I was talking with one of our young friends. In fact, it was in Houston, in the U.S., when my wife and I were visiting. And I was talking about how this song had really ministered to me. And he said, oh, that's Danny Nete's song. So I said, oh, who's Danny Nete? And then eventually we got to meet Danny Nete. He sang, he came and sang at an event that marked, I think, my 60th birthday, 10 years or so ago. And sadly, he's no more with us. But it was a song that really summarized for me that whole time. I will worship you. I will lift you high above the earth. You are God. Yes, you are.
Okay, Abusia Wine and Sama Ekoso, our political highway, so suspended a Chief Justice Torkornoo. Ono, and I see a Commonwealth for my final ruling on the Babonte. Chesa President Mahama and cancel the suspension na ombe acte as Chief Justice of Ghana. Abusia, Yabada Master Samoje Penekoko Tisa and some way at the Mai. Aha, Ghana Politics Avenue. So, Bedamase.